Previous study has shown that roughly 20% of the annual labour takes place in and around the lambing time. And what are the tasks that's taking the most time, or what do people feel are the most onerous tasks? What's eating up their time, I suppose, in and around the lambing time? Look, it's a labour-intensive time. There's no simple solution to that. But I suppose, are there ways that people can be more efficient, or what are the people that are really efficient with their time around lambing time? What are they doing differently to everybody else, I suppose?
Hello, I'm Kieran Lynch, and welcome to OviCast, the Teagasc Sheep podcast. Each episode will bring you latest insights, advice, and technical updates for the sheep industry. We're joined by sheep specialist Damian Costello in this week's episode as he discusses a new survey that's just launched that examines labour on sheep farms. Now, labour is widely acknowledged as a big challenge in the run of sheep enterprise, particularly in an era where part-time sheep farming is now the norm. Damian talks about the key areas the survey is examining and how this information will help inform future discussions in this area. We finish up with Damian explaining how to complete the survey both online and in paper format. We hear now from Damian.
Well, we often hear it said there's a lot of work with sheep, and yes, there is, but there's also lots of room for improvement on many sheep farms in terms of reducing labour. And I suppose this study we're carrying out, it sets out to identify some of the labour challenges, and there are lots of them, and where the time is being spent on sheep farms. And also, we want to collect data on where the gaps are, I suppose, where are improvements needed, be it housing facilities, handling facilities, maybe even fencing infrastructure, and that's just today but a few. So it is it is a really important issue, labour, to address in terms of future-proofing the sheep industry.
I think it's an important point you touched on. Look, we all know individual cases where there's some excellent facilities and very efficient operators, and in other cases, look, there's always room for improvement. But I suppose, to take a national context of it, it's hard to maybe just quantify where those deficits are, and that's something you're hoping to overcome with this survey.
It is indeed, yeah. Look, as you said, there's maybe a lack of information, maybe there, or up-to-date information on where the thing is and where the gaps lie, I suppose.
Look, maybe just tell me a little bit more about the survey itself, what kind of format it is and what you're doing with it.
I suppose the first thing to say maybe is that it's a totally anonymous survey. We'd be hoping that as many sheep farmers as possible can complete it. There's a link to complete it online on SurveyMonkey. But also, if needs be, there are paper versions available from the local Teagasc advisor, and sometimes these work well if you're completing it as part of your discussion group or that. In terms of the survey itself, I suppose the first few questions are just trying to get a handle on the respondents' farming system and the scale of the sheep enterprise and the intensity of it that's on the farm. And then there's a few questions devoted to the time spent at sheep farming, I suppose, and in terms of getting a handle on whether there's an off-farm job. Is it a part-time or a full-time operation? Also, then we'll say how, in terms of the farm structure, how fragmented the farm is there a lot of time spent moving sheep between blocks and so on? And then I suppose we get into a few specific areas after that, really, Kieran.
So, can you get a good background to the kind of structure of the farms? You'll be able to break that up a bit more and look at, you highlight some of the challenges with fragmented farms. We all know that's thrown out as one of the issues. I suppose, Damien, just in terms of the more specific details, what couple of key areas are you focusing them on in terms of actual work with the sheep?
Yeah, look, I suppose previous studies would have shown that efficient sheep farmers would have really good handling facilities and also efficient housing facilities. So, in terms of handling facilities, what we're trying to get from the study really is what people have, where they would see as areas they would like to improve on themselves. Are there gaps there, as I say, in terms of equipment that needs to be improved in terms of labour? In terms of the housing facilities, then, I suppose we're getting a handle on, how people overwinter their sheep. Are they housing them? Are they outwintering them? Is it a combination of both, I suppose? And then in terms of the housing, the type of housing they're using, is it a slatted accommodation, or is it straw bedded, or is it a combination combination of both. The other thing maybe we're just looking at then in terms of those type of facilities is maybe asking people if they've availed of TAMS funding in the past, and if they haven't, I suppose, are there any particular reasons why they didn't apply? And really, I suppose we're looking for the sheep farmers' opinion on what they see as the major labour issues that need addressing. And this is really important to get a handle on what the sheep farmers see as the key areas, or the key areas that they feel if they could improve on, that they would be more labour efficient as a result.
So it's not only the infrastructure, which is important, because that lets us think about where there's future investment needs to go and maybe where support is needed. That's important too. But also the physical efficiency on the farm, where can that be improved? And that's probably more where we need to kind of look at the knowledge transfer aspect of it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we'd be looking at, I suppose, specific areas throughout the production year, if you like. A previous study has shown that roughly 20% of the annual labour takes place in and around the lambing time. And in that particular section, we're looking at what people have out there in terms of facilities in their lambing system. How are they fixed for the likes of individual pens and hot water source in the lambing shed, and also, I suppose, in or around the lambing time, what are the tasks that's taking the most time, or what do people feel are the most onerous tasks or what's eating up their time, I suppose, in or around the lambing time. Look, it's a labour-intensive time. There's no simple solution to that, but I suppose, are there ways that people can be more efficient, or what are the people that are really efficient with their time around lambing time? What are they doing differently to everybody else, I suppose?
Damian, just in terms of completing this, how long does that survey take if you're doing the online version?
It probably takes 10 to 12 minutes, because we've done a couple of dry runs of it with a few people. But that was the feedback, that it was taking about 10 to 12 minutes to complete.
Like, I'm going to be devil's advocate here, but in some aspects, like a lot of what we've chatted about there, it's no harm even to sit down to complete that survey just as a review of your own enterprise. It can sometimes highlight areas that maybe we need to think about more.
So yeah, in terms of completeness, I suppose we finish off with a couple of questions, I suppose, to complete the sheep production year, I suppose. We're getting farmers to identify the tasks throughout the year that they spend most of their time, and there's a list here to choose from, and they can rank them in terms of what's taking the most time or what's the most labour intensive, and we've broken it down there into kind of, we'll say, the likes of from turnout after lambing up to weaning. Then we're looking at the period from weaning to mating, and then we're looking at the period from mating to lambing. So we have a list of 5 or 6 tasks, the main jobs of work during those time periods, and we're looking for people to maybe look at what are the most labour-intensive jobs during those periods.
Okay, so look, you mentioned a link. I can put that link to the survey up in the show notes. Other than that, Damian, the other means of getting access to the survey?
Yeah, as I say, the local advisors, I suppose, will have we'll be able to print out, as I say, a printed version of it. So if you want to complete that and return it to your advisor, some of the advisors are telling us they're completing this with their discussion groups. So in that case, maybe if you're out on a farm in particular, it may be easier to complete a paper version of it, so they can be forwarded on to ourselves, and we'll get them put up on the system. I suppose, look, there's many aspects of sheep farming that do involve physical labour and do take time and effort. But look, we're hoping that a few upgrades at farm level, can reduce labour significantly. And we see this study as an important piece of work in identifying what's out there, and hopefully it can provide guidance on labour efficient sheep farming. What does that look like, I suppose, or what are the really labour efficient guys doing, as well as influencing, I suppose, future policy in terms of support for sheep farmers in improving labour efficiency. So look, we'd encourage, Kieran, all sheep farmers to complete it. As I said earlier on, it only takes maybe 10 or 12 minutes, and it is a very important piece of work.
Look, Damian, it's definitely 10 to 15 minutes well worth spending, not only for thinking about your own system, but also going down the line, like as you indicated there, it could influence policy direction of some of our training and events as well. So well worth completing. It's going to be open for the next couple of months?
Yeah, it's open for the next couple of months, I suppose. Maybe as the nights get a bit longer, maybe people have a bit of time to sit down in the evening. It's not a very onerous task, as I say. Most of the information people will know off the top of their heads about their own sheep enterprise. So, as I say, we'd encourage all sheep farmers to complete it.
Look, I think it is going to be interesting. The findings come out for. I'll book you now in advance, team, to get you back on to hear some of the results. But look, thanks for that.
Very good, Kieran. Thank you.
We'll leave it there for this week's episode. Look, I'd encourage any of our listeners to certainly take the time to complete the survey or forward it to anyone you think who would be relevant to it. I have included a link in the show notes that will bring you straight through to the online SurveyMonkey version. That's it for me. For updates on our sheep program, keep an eye on our Twitter page at Teagasc Sheep. I'm Kieran Lynch. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts.